I received an email with "What is love?" in the subject line. Honestly, I don't usually read these types of email, but for whatever reason, I read this one. It was the story of a teacher who asked her second graders, "What does love mean?" A response from one little girl caught my attention. She said, for her, love is this: when my grandmother got arthritis, she couldn't bend over and paint her toenails anymore. So my grandfather does it for her, even when his hand got arthritis too. This simple response illustrates authentic love, the sacrificial nature of marriage that is no less than a surrendering of one's life for another. It is this kind of ordinary, everyday love that Jesus calls each of us to. The losing of one's life doesn't necessarily mean literally going to the cross, though it might. But any decision to chip off a bit of one's own life in order to give a bit of life to another. Authentic love is the heart of discipleship. In this passage, Jesus uses the word agape, the Greek word for a selfless love, a sacrificial love. It is this love that impels him to go to Jerusalem and to endure suffering for the sake of announcing the reign of God's peace. He goes to Jerusalem to teach and heal, to carry out his mission of revealing the God of mercy, no matter what the consequences. Peter, the leader of the disciples, doesn't get that Jesus has to suffer. Peter, the foundation, the rock of faith, becomes a stone to stumble over because of the way he still thinks. He thinks, as Jesus said in today's gospel, not like God, but like a human being. Well, of course, Peter is a human being, and he's trying to avoid suffering, not only for Jesus, but I guess also for himself. I get that. I don't want to suffer either, nor do I want anyone else to suffer. But I've come to know that to live fully and to love authentically means to embrace suffering, to deal with it squarely, to not run away from it. Our unwillingness to enter fully into experiences of suffering and rejection destines us to feel only the fear, and many times to feel it alone. I was with my mom when she was dying. Cancer had ravaged her body. It was so painful to watch her suffer those last few days. I felt that deep pain, even the thought of losing her. But at the same time, I didn't want to be anywhere else but with her. Like Job in the Old Testament, we may never be able to comprehend the necessity of suffering. But suffering comes with the human condition. And we find consolation in knowing that in the midst of our suffering, in the midst of the suffering of the world, the hand of God is with us. We have a God in Jesus Christ who suffers with us. In this passage from Matthew, Jesus teaches the heart of what it means to be a disciple, to walk in the way of agape, selfless and sacrificial love. Jesus teaches us that as disciples we must take up our cross, just as Jesus will in Jerusalem, to stay the course, to stay on the way, no matter how difficult, because we know that our God will make a way when there is no way. A friend of mine once said to me, "Terry, you're either on the way or in the way. So as disciples, we need to keep getting back on the way." I often remind myself when I start thinking about myself and not others, that it's not about me. It's not about fulfilling my needs and making the world the way I think it should be. So the heart of discipleship, as Jesus teaches us, is service, especially to people who are hurting, people who are poor, people on the margins. Jesus' teaching on self-denial does not negate self-value or having a good self-image. We know that we can't love others unless we love ourselves. We who have been loved into life by a merciful and faithful God, because we have been loved, then we have the courage to love others, to share God's mercy with the world. We are called to be disciples of Christ every day in every way, in the small things and in the big things of life. Sharing agape, chipping off a bit of our own life in order to give a bit of life to another. This is what love is. This is what it means to be a disciple and to live a full and purpose-filled life.